Richard Preble. I live on Church Street. I was brought up on Main Street, and I was born on Maple Street.
What Why did you decide to join the military?
My number came up.
Oh.
Uh, uh,
What branch did you join?
just to change on the, go back to the other one, I had gone to cooking school out of high school. I went to Penny Farmers School of Cooking in Boston, and learned how to cook. I got a job at Howard Johnson's down on 125 in Reading, the end of Lawrence, that area there. So I cooked there for 3 years, and my number came up for the draft, and I said, I don't want to be a cook. In the Army, I don't want to be a cook. I enjoyed it out at Howard Johnson, so I asked them whether they had a list of schools that they had from the Army, and they did, so they gave it to me. I went down through the list, only looking for one thing: number of weeks in school. So I found the biggest number I could find there, 97 weeks, which is almost a year. So I said, that's the one. And they said, well, we got to check your high school records before we can do that. And so I checked my records and said, well, the English was not good, so on, and but they said, okay. So they finally sent me to radar school in the Army. So that's how I got in there, and so I went to El Paso, Texas for my boot camp. Down on the border from Mexico, cross over the bridge to Mexico, and so I went there for school for that number of weeks, a whole year of schooling there, and became a radar mechanic. So yeah, it was. After training,
Yeah, what was your first duty station?
Japan.
Ah.
Went over there, put me on a boat and shipped me over to Japan. And I was stationed in a little town over there. Even though I was in the Army, I didn't end up on an Army base. There were Air Force bases over there, Army bases, everything over there. But because I was a radar mechanic, they wanted me to be out near the radar, and the radar was there to watch for the Russians when they took off up from someplace up in Russia. And if they didn't turn, we fired up the radar and had 5 big guns out there ready to shoot at them. So that was, so I was not on a base. I was in a little Army unit out in a town called Higashi-Akaru. A lot of Japanese guys there. They came in, cleaned your room. You pay them $1 per week or something, and that, that's where I was stationed the whole time. I was there. Was never on a base, and little story of in between there. I would have to go into get on the train and go into Tokyo. Tokyo was nice. Had all kinds of activities there. And I was going into there one day. I'd taken the train in, and I'm walking through the Tokyo station, and I heard somebody holler, "Hey, Dick Preble! Hey, Dick Preble!" And I looked around, and two guys over there, and so I went over, Dick Noel and Bob Hill from West Newbury. Two guys over there. They were in the Air Force, they were on the base and so on. So we talked, but you're in Japan, so you hear somebody's hear your name called. A little bit of a surprise. Yeah. I was in for 3 years. 3 years, and then when it came time to re-enlist, most places came around and got people to re-enlist. And at that time in Japan, they said, no re-enlistment to men. Men cannot re-enlist. And I found out why. They said the girls were so nice. They were marrying GIs as fast as they came out, and they were just so nice that they finally had to give up re-enlistments there, because all the guys were getting married to the Japanese girls. They just were nice. Yeah. Maybe you don't want to put that in there, but yeah, that's the reason why, though. It's a crazy reason, right? Yeah. I didn't think of anything better than anyone else. Yeah. Yeah.
What rank were you when you were discharged?
SP5, Special Projects rank 5. So it was like a colonel. I mean, yeah, third rank up in the thing.
What medals or citations did you receive that you're proud of?
I didn't receive anything I was really proud of. No, I was there and just served, and that was it. Came back home. Yeah.
Do you keep in touch with anyone you were in service with still?
No. All the ones I met over there are all gone. Yeah.
After you left Japan, did you come back to West Newbury?
Yeah.
What did you do after you got out of the Army?
I went and got a job with Western Electric over in Lawrence on Canal Street, and was there for 3 or 4 months, and they built the new plant in Boxwood, the huge plant they built there, and so they shipped me over there. I was a stock clerk, and I didn't like being a stock clerk, so I went to Raytheon, and my job at Raytheon was assembling Hawk missiles. Hawk missiles at that time, way back then, used to have tubes in them and so forth. So I had to solder these in. And so I was doing that, assembling those, and did well there, and stayed there for quite for 3 or 4 years, I think, doing that. I got to be known as a repair guy, and they would come along in the middle of the day and say, "Oh, can you stay tonight for a couple hours?" So I'd work until 11 o'clock at night, something like that. And sometimes they come along and say, "Can you stay overnight tonight? We have a test going on." So I'd stay overnight and watch the testing and so forth. And so I did that for a while, and then I hooked up with one of my old friends from Groveland, who was working for Textron, and switched over to Textron and designed test equipment for missiles and so forth. And I was just in an engineering group that was in charge of designing test equipment for testing missiles. And all the missiles that we were flying out of Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. So if they had a flight go and something didn't work on my equipment, they'd say, "Go, go." I said, "What time?" "Now." Yeah.
On a plane with you.
Yeah, I'm playing right now. Yeah, planes were totally different then. Planes back then only used half of the plane for seating of passengers, and then they would have a lounge in the other half of it, and going up to 10,000 feet or something like that, some level. You can get up out of your seat, go back, sit down, have a drink, have a meal, and so forth. So a little different back then than it is now. Now you get on, they just full of passengers. That's why it made quite a few trips to Cal to Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, which is just up above LA. It's about close to 2 hours up there, and fix whatever they want me to, or look at whatever they want me to look at, and sometimes it was bad, sometimes it was okay.
What years did you serve in the military?
1953 to 1956. I went in 53. It was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And,
You still cook?
no, no. I married a cook. I married a cook.
Where did you meet your wife?
Met her at cooking school first time. We didn't go out very often because I was going to work and so on. Well, a couple of times we got to know each other a little bit, and I went in the Army. Yeah, and
Came out and got married.
yeah, I came out and got married. Well, after a while, it was not immediate. I had met her in Cook, different life back then. So you gotta establish yourself a little bit, and so a while later we got married.
You did a lot. You did a lot with Boy Scouts in West Newbury too.
Yeah,
Years.
I was Scoutmaster for 30 years in West Newbury. Used to start out as Scoutmaster, meeting up over Bailey's barn, right next door to the post office. And so I did Scoutmaster then, and then after I had done that, I did week-long canoe trips with the Boy Scouts. I used to take 12 to 14 boys on a canoe trip up in New Hampshire, Maine, and do that. And this was with no telephones. No telephones back in those days. Yeah, so if something went wrong, if they smashed up a canoe or something, you found a place for them to stay, and they said, go stay in the woods right there. I'll be back in 4 days. Here's some dehydrated food for you. Don't forget to eat, but always gave them a cape or something to put over them, but no tent or anything like that. And just kind of put them up in the woods and said, that's it, I'll be back in 3 or 4 days. And I come back. Yeah, that would be crazy nowadays, wouldn't it? Saying, here you are. Yeah.
Were you ever did you ever run for a select board or planning board or anything like that?
Yeah, I did quite a few years of selection committee for West Newbury. It was a board of 4 or 5 of us plan activities in town, and I was involved in a couple of good projects there and helped out. One of them I remember very easily, up where Page School is now. There used to be a big garage up there where the town workers would go to rest and do stuff in the town, and got hooked up with Ringenback, and I had inspected some of the buildings up there, which were horrible. The bathrooms didn't work. The old building just past the school was a mess. And so I finally got that moved across the street. It's that long building now, has parking for vehicles and trucks, about, maybe 6 trucks in there now. big sand pile out there, and so very, very proud of getting that taken care of. And
That was the capital improvements committee that you're on?
yeah, capital improvements, yeah.
And council on aging, you were on the board.
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
long time,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, I was on council on aging way back when Olive West used to be there. I don't know if you remember Olive West. She was from Merrimack, and she ran council on aging. And the reason why I got involved there, I used to deliver some food, Meals on Wheels, and then when she was getting ready for her annual report to the state, I used to go in and she said, I have no idea what this is all about. And so I used to go down to the list, make up the whole report to go into the state. I did that for about 4 years, and she went away. And yeah, you know, it was just funny that she just didn't have any idea what to do with numbers. She did a good job at the council on aging, but yeah, and so I did that, and then I stayed on for the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So I've been there for 4 of them. Yeah, and been fun doing it. You know, meet a lot of town people, and see a lot of them in there, and yeah, yeah. So did that. Yeah, and that was the building where council on aging is now. It's on the back end of the building. I went to high school in that building. There were 12 rooms in the building. Well, first grade, you went in, you were always in the first room on the right, and that was your room. And then you moved to the second, and so forth. And then when you got to be in the 7th grade, you went upstairs, and you got a room assigned upstairs. So there were 12 rooms in the building. You went 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up through, yeah. And you had the principal of the school was Ron Gibbons, and Ron also, being the principal of that school, he was also the math teacher, and very good at it, and so I enjoyed that. And his wife was our English teacher, and she told me in my freshman year, you're a C student, it will never be more. Yeah, she was very fun. I ain't got no C on my report card. I said, you're big on me, that's it. And then Leo Susi was sports director, and Peg Costello was a business manager, typing and so forth. So not many teachers there. There were 17 of us. So I'm not sure. We didn't start out with 17. You know, Brian Spencer, I decided to go to the Botech school or something. He went over there, farming type of stuff, and so forth. So, but we there were 17 of us, and we all fit in one building. And the building has been expanded now. Council on Aging was built on the back side of it, and I was just in there last week, and they have a receptionist in the entry area now. Just as of a couple of days ago. Keep on improving. Yeah. Yeah, I did a lot of things in the town, and so I did a lot of things with Boy Scouts too. I started as Scoutmaster, and then I got involved with setting up new camps up in the area there. When they started a new camp and had to get equipment set up and ready for it, I would help out with that, and so always involved there, and yeah.